Um. So this will be on our YouTube channel, but you'll get the links.
Cool.
So,
Does it make me look younger?
so Judy Butler is a fused glass artist, and here she is.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much, you guys, for coming today, in spite of the storm that's not occurring yet. So I am a fused glass artist. I've been involved in glass for over 20 years. And I got into glass because I was a high school art teacher, and it was one of the mediums that I learned about for teaching in my classroom. And I have to say, as soon as I started playing with the glass, I was kind of unhappy because I realized that it was my passion and that it's really stinking expensive. And I had been a watercolor artist, which is very lightweight and inexpensive. So I'm like, oh no. But I just love the glass, and I love the fact that you can endlessly experiment with the glass. And I have yet to find some idea that I haven't been able to bring to fruition with the glass. So that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. As a watercolor artist, I found that there were a lot of similarities with the watercolor and glass. For example, the glass, you're layering, just like in watercolor. You're looking for transparency versus opaque, same as watercolor. You're creating textures. So there's so many similarities, but I love one of the things about the glass is simply the fact that it's so tactile. And that's the big advantage, in my opinion, is I love to be able to touch things. And so when I'm doing, for example, a show, and I see people come into my booth and they come in and they look at things, and then they look around to see if they can watch. Tactile person. So yeah, so I love touching the imagery. Fortunately, I haven't found that it's been a big issue with bleeding too much or anything like that, so that's good. I have a fabulous studio, if I could say for myself. And I live over in the Lincoln, Newcastle area. It's out in the country if you haven't been out there. It's a beautiful area, and we have a 10-acre piece of property, and I used to have a studio in a single wide mobile office space. It was awful. And then I got moved up in the world to the barn, which was awful because I really didn't enjoy sharing it with the rodents. And then I went into the house one day and I said, you know, I'd really appreciate it if we could just have a real studio for me. And my husband loves to build things and organize stuff, which I think is why he likes me. And so he built a 4-car garage, and that is my studio.
Wow.
It's fabulous. So when he built the place, he had asked me, he said, okay, so what are your requirements? And I said, heating and air conditioning and a bathroom. And I got both of them. So it's so special. So I love getting to have my space, and I do end up sharing it quite frequently with other artists, especially my mother, who loves to paint. And so she comes out and she paints in my studio. And then I have a couple other friends who like to share the studio, a printmaker and a Rebecca Martinez, if you know her. She's a polymer clay artist. They also come out and work in the studio too. So that's kind of neat. I'm at a couple galleries in the area, one of which is Persimmon Art Gallery. And if you're not familiar with this gallery, you better be. Okay, so this is a fabulous gallery. We just moved to a brand new space in downtown Auburn. downtown,
Yeah.
downtown. And it's at 900 Lincoln Way, so that's why it has this nice sticker on there. This is an older flyer for ours. We now have 28 artists in our space. And it's just an incredible space. We're still working on improving all the time, but we've been in there a grand total of 3 weeks now. So we're working hard. So you're welcome to take one of these if you would like. And we are open every day. And we also teach a lot of classes there, which is one of our goals, is to have classes. So we have some amazing artists who have joined the gallery and are nationally and internationally recognized, who are interested in teaching classes there. Oil painters, acrylic, printmakers. So we've got a lot of different people who want to teach there. In addition to Uni Stevens, and I know she came here and did a demo for you guys. And Uni is frequently teaching there. She was teaching yesterday. So these are available if anybody wants one. Thank you. So in regards to my glass is a type of glass called bullseye. And if you're not familiar with glass, how many people in here are glass artists? Okay, very good. So you guys are familiar with glass. And so my glass is a glass that is manufactured up in Portland. Are you a Portland bullseye people? Oceanside? Pardon me?
We're familiar with.
You're familiar with it,
We went
okay.
to one in Oakland too, in Emeryville.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. So the mothership is in Portland, and then the baby ships are, they've got them like one in Emeryville area and Santa Fe and New York, and they've been building these other little stores around the country, which is great, so that you don't have to pay the astronomical shipping. The reason why it's significant to me that my glass is all made by this same manufacturer is because of the fact that glass has what's coefficient of expansion. And a coefficient of expansion simply means that the glass will expand and contract. And you want to make sure that all the glass will expand and contract at the exact same rate. So there are a couple different manufacturers, primarily in the United States. There's Bullseye, and there's also Oceanside, which is San Diego, Tijuana-ish. And then there's also what's called float glass. And float glass is glass that is manufactured primarily for windows, things like that. The float glass by far is the cheapest, which is really nice. Bullseye, not cheap, neither is Oceanside, because they're manufactured specifically for fusing. Oceanside and Bullseye are two different manufacturers, and they also have very different COEs. So when I first started getting into glass, people would talk about the whole COE thing, and I would just be, you know, what the heck is that number for? And I think, okay, well, 90, 96, that's a really close number, because Bullseye is a COE 90, Oceanside is 96, and I think, oh, well, they're close numbers. Why can't you just put them in the kiln and fire them next to each other, you know, and layer them together? Well, then I find out, as soon as I've done it, that as soon as you pull it out of the kiln, or if not before, your piece is broken. And the reason why it's broken is simply because the COE is different, which simply means that the molecules expand and contract at different rates from each other. So they're not compatible. So that's the important thing to be aware of with glass. Also, float glass is not compatible with any of the other glasses either. So in my studio, I work 99 and 9/10% of the time strictly on Bullseye. And every now and then, if I'm playing with something else and I get an idea that works with float glass, then I will use float glass. And float glass is so easily accessible. A lot of times I'll go to thrift stores and purchase picture frames that are, you know, sometimes nice, sometimes crappy, but they'll have glass in them. And that's the glass that you can use. So,
The glass in the front of the. frame?
yeah, the glass in the frame,
Oh,
and,
it's so
and
thick.
that is float glass. Yeah, yeah. So that's very handy to be able to have that available. When I'm working with glass, I have some basic tools that are used for whichever type of glass I'm using. Of course, I have my black nippers. These are the Cadillac nippers. So for those of you, if you have anything like arthritis or anything like that, the Cadillacs are very, very handy to have. I call these the Cadillac ones because that's not the manufacturer. That is, they're stinking expensive. They're like $100. Whereas you can go to Home Depot and buy nippers for tile and stuff for $15, something like that. And they're really, you know, they work well, but they exhaust my hand and then my hand gets incredibly sore. So these are my favorite nippers. And when, pardon me,
It's the brand.
That
I'm
is-
gonna get some.
Frida,
Excuse me,
Frida,
Frida?
BREDA. Yeah, they're, I think they're being manufactured again. Of course, as soon as I bought these, then they quit manufacturing. But I think they're being manufactured again, but they're really wonderful. And whenever I'm teaching a class and I see people who are struggling with the old kind of nippers, then I hand them these, I say, use the Cadillacs, and they go, oh, these are great. So when I'm using the nippers, I use nippers a lot in my glass. So for example, in this little piece here where I have a bushy sheet, I use my nippers for making the little triangle heads, you know. You can just start with a little square, nip it across, and you can end up with those nice little triangle heads. So they're incredibly helpful. Goofy birds, again, just using nippers. So ears, nippers. I use a lot of nippers. So when I'm using the nippers, basically what I do is I take a piece of scrap glass, which I have copious amounts, and I'll just lay it into my nippers so that they're in the corner there. I put my hand over it so I don't have to go and hunt for the piece. And then it just simply nips off that little guy. So very easy, straightforward, and I like easy and straightforward. So these are my big guys. Then I also have my glass cutter. And if you haven't used a glass cutter before, they're great. There's a couple different kinds. This is the pencil grip. And basically glass cutter is a misnomer. It doesn't really cut the glass. It kind of explains to the glass. This is where I want you to break. And so when you roll it across the glass, it doesn't cut anything. So you can see it's not cutting me. So it's just going to end up explaining to the glass, this is what I want you to do. And when you're doing the glass cutting, sorry, you can't see very well. When you're doing glass cutting, you want to hear a specific sound. And the sound is like, you know, that's the best I can do. So you're going to hear that little sound. You guys hear that?
So is it scoring it then?
Yep, it's scoring, yeah. And so when I was teaching, I would love, my kids loved it. I'd say, okay, today you guys are gonna learn to score. I love that. That would always get their attention. And then another tool that I use are my running pliers. So the running pliers, if you look at them from the end, they have a little frowny face. And so the frowny face is basically going to apply pressure. That's going to apply pressure to your piece of glass on the sides. And then it's going to just gradually break. Real easy. So this is float glass, by the way. And I'm going to, there it goes. So, and you notice when I did that score, I scored all the way across the glass. A lot of people ask me, well, how do you make a square. Well, first you have to go across and then you have to cut this way in order to get a square, because you can't go halfway and then turn and then get it cut. Because the glass wants to break straight-ish. No, not always straight. So that's a little bit about the scoring.
Do you ever heat the glass?
Do I heat it?
Yeah, we used to heat it. Before
Oh,
we scored it
before-
and snipped
No,
it.
because my studio is heated.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's much easier. And then I use the tweezers a lot, especially because I have so many of those little tiny pieces that I have to put on. So I use my little tweezers. I have to say, tweezers, I can't believe how handy they are. I only started using tweezers like a year ago. Somebody came into my studio and she was helping me and she was using tweezers that she brought. And I'm like, what are you using tweezers for? And she goes, oh, they're really handy. And she's just going like gangbusters. Okay, maybe I better get some tweezers. They're very, I have been a tweezer convert. And another tool that I use is super glue. Now, some people use like Elmer's glue. I don't know. Do you use super glue?
I don't use any glue at all,
No
cause
glue.
I'm like 2 steps away from my assembly to my
Uh-huh.
kiln. So
Oh, see, and even if I was, I would still use super glue, but super glue to me really helps. Because when I'm assembling pieces like all these eyeballs and ears.
oh, I use
all
hairspray.
those things, I just glue those little suckers down and then take them over to the kiln. And so it doesn't matter if I'm standing at the kiln, in the kiln, or next to the kiln, I glue. Some people will use things like Elmer's glue. They'll use, there's glue manufactured by the glass companies that you can use. I like using something that's fast and cheap and easily accessible, so that's why I use the super glue. And of course, then you get to glue your fingers together. Very essential. So those are my basic tools. I just added a new tool, and just added meaning like 2 days ago. And that is this great little pen. And this little pen has enamel in it, and I use a lot of enamels. So for example, when I'm doing these guises, okay, these are all done with fused glass enamels. And so the enamels that I use are all manufactured by this company, Rogue. And I took a class up in Canada where that was the only place that they were selling Rogue enamels. But I knew that this woman that was teaching the class, Marguerite Beneke, was a superb glass painter. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I gotta go to Canada and I gotta take this class. And it was way expensive, but it was so worth it. Because as a watercolorist, I've been fairly adept at painting. And one of my goals with doing the glass was always to be able to figure out how to incorporate my painting skills in with the glass. And so that's what the enamels have allowed me to do, is that I can paint on the glass. I can paint on the front of the glass. I can paint on the back of the glass. This, by the way, is float glass. So it's all float. This was float glass also. Painted on the front, painted on the back. And by painted, I mean painted with the enamels, put it in the kiln, fire it in the kiln, take it out of the kiln, paint it some more, put it back in the kiln. And so it's very forgiving. And if you don't like what you've done and you've just fired it and you added something else, you can wash it off. I mean, it's fused into the glass. So I love this stuff. This guy here, I decided to do, I painted, this is Seagull's green. I painted him on, regular bullseye glass because I just wanted to see, okay, so I've done so many on, the float glass. What's it like when I paint on bullseye? And it was fun. And the other thing that I liked about painting on the bullseye is simply the fact that I have so many bullseye elements, like the little flowers and the polka dots, that I was able to incorporate those into these pieces. Whereas I can't incorporate those onto these because they're an incompatible glass. So that makes
They would
sense.
just sit on top.
You know, they break. Yeah, you'd end up with it breaking.
Nice.
So, so these guys all use the rogue enamels, and that's what's in this pen. And so the woman in Canada that had the class, she's fabulous, and she develops all sorts of online classes, all sorts of stuff, and then inside in-person classes, and then she's also going to be teaching at Las Vegas at the Glass Expo down there. So she's an amazing woman, and she's also just developed these pens in which you simply fill them with your enamel, and then you can simply draw with them. See. Yep, there we go. Come on. Okay, well, let's stay here. Well, it's more on that. Once I get it going again, I'll next week. Oh, there it goes. And it's basically like drawing with a marker. That's basically what it is. And so it's ideal for doing glass work, in my opinion. And you can, if you wanted to, you could change colors. She's got a bunch of different pens that you could purchase. So I think it's got a whole lot of potential, and I'm very excited about being able to do that with the rogue enamels. Now, the enamels that I've mentioned before, they come, as you can see, as a powder. And in the class that I took, what they did is they gave us the powders, they gave us all these cute little scales, and they explained to us how to mix these powders. And so you would mix the powder with a liquid, and they have a medium that is specially designed for the rogue enamels, which is great. And so then you mix it into some sort of container, and I use a wide variety of containers, whatever I can find sitting around my studio at that moment. And then I simply mix it in there and stir it up so that it comes out as kind of like, buttermilk, pancake batter. Huh?
What is the medium?
The medium, it's some sort of oil medium. And when I don't feel like using it, it's water soluble. I have also used clove oil. You can use wintergreen oil, but they make this special for it. And so I'm fine with it. I use this most of the time. So that's what I tend to use. And so you mix it together, you end up with this medium like that. Then you simply start painting with it. So here's our little paint station. And I use simple water, standard paint brushes. Everything is the same as it ever was. And these are some little ornaments that I made the other night, just playing around with these different colors. So, for example, I did a little snowman, and these are on bullseye. I did them purposely on bullseye because I wanted to be able to use some of my bullseye glass for like a fringe and stuff like that around them. And then the black outline for this little dude is this delightful little pen, which really hot on that pen right now.
Are
So-
some of the, excuse me, are some of the enamels transparent?
They do have some transparent ones, and I have not played with those yet. So far, the ones that I have strictly played with are the ones that they were teaching with, which were the opaque ones. But yes, they do. So these are my little guys that I made just probably in like an hour of playing around. And so I was just doing some different designs. I was really focusing on doing trees a lot because, well, Christmas trees, and then playing with different ways of incorporating the enamel design in with the glass. And then like for this one here, I put clear frit around it. Frit is broken glass. And so I put clear frit around it just to kind of give it a little more texture. This one I put some very fine frit around it in order to make it kind of a bluish cast. So I just played with it and I had a lot of fun with the enamels. I enjoy the enamels a lot. But my first love still is doing the wonky art. So let's see, if I was to do something with enamels right now, because I thought maybe you would like to see how you paint with them.
Does it have to be fired after?
It has to be fire, yes. Very good question. So what I do with this is I take my blank, which in this case is a piece of clear. It could be any color. You know, I could do it with white or brown or whatever color I wanted. But since I was doing ornaments, and then I have my palette here, and my palette simply has these enamels that I've already put out here. And I put these enamels out here a couple days ago, and so they stayed pretty good for a couple days. And if they start to get too thick or heavy, I can add a little bit of water to them, or I can add more of my medium to them in order to make them back to that consistency again. So yeah, so it's working now. And then I can just come in here and, well, sort of working. There we go. So I can get kind of a Christmas tree-ish design. And then what I do is after I have an image painted on here that I like, or don't like, but I like it enough, then I take it and I put it on a heat tray, you know, like you use for food of some kind, you know, like a casserole, you know, to keep it warm. You just place this on there, because otherwise, if I just left this to sit here, it would take days to dry. And so if I put it on the heat tray, it'll dry, and then I can come back in and I can layer it again and give it more texture. Or I can come in with my other glass, or I can come in with my pen and I can draw on it. So that, in a nutshell, that's what we use of enamels. But the heat tray I found is extremely important when you're using the enamels, because you can't, like, for example, you can go over an enamel color. For example, let's say I painted this background here and I wanted to add some birds, then I could do that without ever firing this piece if the background is completely dry. And then you can go in and you can add details and stuff like that on top of it. But the background has to be dry before you start to layer on top of it.
And we don't believe in the firing process.
It does not, no. Yeah, so they really are lovely enamels. So this guy here is also enamels, and for her, I painted on the back and I painted on the front, and I probably fired this puppy like 9 times because she just was not where I wanted her to be. And so I kept on playing with it and playing with it and playing with it, thinking, okay, she'll either break or it'll get there. And finally arrived. So I was very happy with her. Yes.
The gold on top, is that the enameling?
It
Or metallic
is
enameling?
it is a gold that is, I didn't bring it today. It's made by Jacquard. And the lady that taught the class, Marguerite, said that she had found that this specific gold, when you paint it on, it's not designed for glass. But when you paint it on, it ends up firing into the glass. Jacquard is a company that's over in Marin County, and they make their supplies primarily for painting on fabrics. Yeah, so I ended up buying, of course, because I experiment all the time. I bought the gold and I bought the bronze and I brought the copper and all these different colors thinking, all right, this will be great. Only the gold did it. All the others burned out. So, okay, well, now I'm gonna have to go paint fabric, I guess.
I think I like this style a little better than glue.
Well, it's funny that you mention that because I painted this right after I got back from Vienna. Because I went to Vienna specifically to go and see his work. So,
I lived there for 6 months.
oh, so cool.
The kids, I do.
Yes, yeah, it's amazing there. So, okay, you guys have any questions for me? Yeah.
No, a heat tray, say you don't have one and you wanna try,
Uh-huh.
and you use like the electric griddle.
Yes, I have an electric griddle too.
All right, and
Yeah.
then if you don't have a kiln, can you use your oven?
No,
No.
that's a very good question. Okay, so this all does require a kiln. So, and generally speaking, well, my kilns are all glass kilns. However, I know a lot of people do have ceramic kilns or purchase ceramic kilns much more readily. And so you can use either kind of kiln. It doesn't have to be specifically a glass kiln. But the biggest difference between a glass kiln and a ceramics kiln is the fact that the elements are primarily in the lid when you have a glass kiln. And that's significant, especially if you're working on a large piece of glass, because you want to make sure that your glass is heated very evenly all the way across. And so that's why they put the elements in the lid. Versus ceramics kilns, those elements are primarily in the sides, in which case you would end up with cool areas. Now, my glass tends to be fairly small, even, these guys, these are not big pieces. And so I personally would not be worried if I were firing in a ceramics kiln. The other thing that I like about the enamels too, is that they don't tend to need firing that is quite as hot as some of the fusing glass. And I didn't mention about the fusing temperatures. The fusing temperatures for bullseye glass can be anywhere from 1250 degrees, which is just enough to get your glass to relax and curve a little bit, to 1500 degrees is usually about the top. And at 1500, glass will become very smooth. And of course, I have nothing here that is that type because I don't tend to do that temperature. My glass, my favorite number is 1375. And at 1375, my glass will fuse together, but maintain a lot of texture. And so that's always important to me because I like that texture on my glass. So 1375 is my favorite number in the world. Let's see. Oh, I need to tell you also that it is another type of enamel.
Judy, can I interrupt?
Yes, ma'am.
We have a question from Zoomland.
Yeah.
Do rogue enamels fire with a shiny surface?
Yes.
And do you have to sift clear powder over?
No.
And then before you found this new pen, what did you use to make your black outlines?
That's an excellent question. That was what I was going to respond to. And a lot of my pieces are kind of cartoonish, in which they have outlines and polka dots. Love polka dots. And so what I used for all of those has been this medium here called glass line. And so glass line has been very handy. It comes in a variety of colors. I primarily use it in either white or black. That's why this yellow has never been opened. So I take it out of these bottles because I didn't particularly like these bottles. And I put them into these little bottles that I found over at Tap Plastics. And these bottles are much handier to me because they've got this nice little needle. Thank you, needle on the end of it. And with that needle, then I'm able to, let's focus in Bob. Yay! So you can do all sorts of designs and easily do outlines, which is my favorite thing to do, is outlines and polka dots. And so this is what I have always used for my goofy artwork, which I consider these my goofy artworks. So my whimsical stuff. Any other questions?
Any secret for cutting curves and circles?
Use a glass grinder.
I avoid the grinder as much as I can.
Really?
Yeah, I just,
Oh,
on some of my stuff, I just want to grind it off.
oh, well,
And I'm lucky with the layering, because sort of
yeah.
works, but
Well,
smooth it.
I have to say, when I developed my style, like for what's in my night lights and my wall pieces, that style pretty much developed because of the fact that I make crappy cutters. I mean, I am not a good cutter, and I'm not really interested in being a good cutter. I like the wonkiness of, oh, that cut went weird. And in regards to circles, I almost never do circles. It's, to me, there's a lot of wasted glass and just
Well,
not
there
a
is a
circle.
tool to cut
Oh,
around.
yeah, I have them.
Yeah.
I have every tool.
I love tools.
I do too. I'm addicted to them. But my favorite tools are my Taurus ring saw. Those of you who are glass people, you know how wonderful those are. And then I have a flat lap grinder. And a flat lap grinder is a grinder that is obviously flat. And it goes in a circle. And then you can take your piece of glass and let's say I want a little corner taken off, you can just go, and it takes that corner off. That,
I have a wizard.
a wizard.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
oh yeah, that one. I like those, the little grinders, but you know, if you're working with a larger surface, then it just doesn't work well because then you end up with the wavies going on. So the flat lap to me works wonderfully. Love it.
It has a flat bed.
Yes.
It's-
Uh-huh.
The wizard is about this big.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of the wrong one then. Okay. So anyway, so I love those electric tools also. Any other questions?
May I say something from Zoomland too?
Zoomland.
The depth of your pieces are wonderful. It's kind of like you feel like you could reach in and your fingers go into some sort of liquid. It's wonderful. And they're a lot of fun to have on the video too. So just thought I'd say that.
Thank you.
Oh, so I interrupted you when you were picking up the chickens.
Chicken. Oh, so the chickens.
She tries to show us everything that you show.
Oh, thank you. So the chickens are I love making ornaments. They're my favorite thing. And so I also show for the Crocker Art Festival, which is the weekend after Thanksgiving, just in case you want to go to a really good art festival, booth 144. And people come to that art festival looking for what's my ornament of the year. So these are my ornament of the year. Every year I come up with a different thing, and these are my newbies. So, and I love them, and I liked them so much that I put pins on some of them, so I wear them, and they're just so funny. They crack me up. My studio is right across from the chicken coop, So I do tend to have a lot of chickens. Chickens feature frequently in my artwork.
Do you get the thickness of your eyes?
Okay, so she asked about the thickness of the eyes. So one of the things about glass is glass wants to be 6 millimeters. And so when you layer glass, whether you've got a layer of 3 or 4 or 5 layers, if you put it in a kiln at full temperature, which would be 1500 degrees, it is going to become 6 millimeters. 6 millimeters is the thickness of 2 pieces of glass. These are both 3 millimeters. And so if you have a big stack, it becomes 6 millimeters and it will expand. If you have a singular piece, like this little tiny piece here, then it will suck up and it will become 6 millimeters. So I use that concept in order to create all my eyeballs. So I have huge amounts of scrap glass. And so I, nip up the scrap glass, like, just whack off these guys. And I throw these little squares into the kiln, fire them at 1500 degrees, and they will round because they want to become 6 millimeters. And so then I end up with boatloads of eyeballs. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
When do you add the black dot?
Um,
A second firing?
yes, so they become 6 millimeters. I have a box of eyeballs or round white. And then I pull them out and I place them down, use my super glue, and then I use my enamel, this enamel, in order to do the polka dots and the eyeballs and all that kind of stuff.
That's a dumb question, but once you use the super glue, it can't go in the kiln.
Yeah, the super glue goes in the kiln and it burns off. Yeah, which is one of the advantages that it will, for the most part, it will hold things in place. Even if I trip on the way to the kiln, and then I can put it in the kiln, it will burn off and I don't have any residue from the super glue. Whereas sometimes I've seen where with white glue, it can leave a residue. So I like the super glue because it doesn't leave residue. So good questions. Anything else? No?
What's the temperature for the rogue enamels to fire those?
It's really the same. Usually I end up firing at about 1375 because my kilns tend to be also rammed at 1375 most of the time.
And they're not ceramic kilns.
No, I just have glass kilns.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
When your peak temperature is 375, how do you program your go as far as the ramp?
Oh, the ramping and
the
everything.
rate, that's the part where I get involved.
My favorite, and I know there's a lot of science to this whole thing, and I am not a scientist. I thought I did good when I finally figured out what makes the scum on glass. So, what I tend to do is for almost everything, I ramp up at 300 degrees. And then I ramp it all the way up to my maximum temperature, which for this is 1375. And then I bring the temperature down as fast as possible to the annealing temperature. And annealing, if you're not familiar with that term, is where you need to give the glass time, the molecules in the glass time to be nice to each other. Because you got all those little guys and they're in there and they're fighting with each other. So you need to give all those molecules time to learn to be nice in the sandbox again. So I hold it, especially for these little pieces, I hold it at 900 degrees for half an hour. And 900 degrees is the temperature that Bullseye has told me to anneal at. If I used Oceanside, they have like 950 or something like that. It's fairly close. And I'm not even really sure what the temperature is for doing the float glass, but I haven't ever had any problems. And the float glass, I don't really worry as much about the annealing concept because I don't have separate pieces of glass that I've added on there. It's still all the same piece of glass. So I don't really worry about whether or not I'm annealing it a sufficient amount of time. Does that make sense? But you can go online on, say Bullseye, and they'll give you a boatload of information on how long are you supposed to do this. And I look at those and think, oh, it's way too much information. I just want to do, you know, just my little sets. So, anything else?
And do you have work at the Persimmon Art Gallery?
You betcha.
All right.
Yes, we have work at Persimmon and also at Auburn Old Town Gallery, which I'm in both of those. And then I also do, every now and then I teach classes. So I have a little class coming up that is going to be making sun catchers. So, which is a lot of fun. So if anybody's interested, you're welcome to come and join the class. Okay. Class dismissed.
So, I'm gonna come and take a look at your stuff.
Please do.